Hello everybody, it's Max with Crypto Talk now. It's official. The United States is developing a bank-to-bank digital currency. What's the Quant connection? Well, before we get into today's video, I would like to state this. There's enough evidence to support that there is just that, a Quant connection. So let's go ahead and jump into today's Quant coverage. And I'm going to go ahead and full screen this. And if anything, look at this for yourself. For one, this comes from the Digital Pound Foundation. And like you see the article, it is official. The United States is, in fact, developing a bank-to-bank digital currency. I'll have an outline that will go over just that and these particular statements. And on top of that, the Quant connection. While the world, of course, was busy watching the collapse of crypto exchange FTX, like we saw, the U.S. Federal Reserve System made an important move, speaking at the Singapore FinTech Festival on November 4th. A senior official from the New York Federal Reserve surprised many in the audience by announcing that for the past several months, the New York Fed has been developing a wholesale central bank digital currency CBDC designed to speed up transfers between banks around the world. Now, you got to keep in mind, when it comes to this, a lot of people feel as though that this is shocking, considering we were all under the assumption that the United States wasn't going to be on board for some of this technology until the end of 2025 by coming into, for instance, ISO 222. Remember, as we mentioned before, they're going to be the last to show up to the big show. On top of that, it says, for those who thought the United States was behind, like I just mentioned, in the digital currency space race, the news was welcome. In a subsequent white paper on the project named Project Cedar, the New York Fed explained that it has already completed stage 1 of testing and proved that international currency transactions could be done both quickly and safely through the blockchain. But buried in the technical details was a revealing line on the ambitions of the project. The goal of the new network is, quote, to reduce settlement risk in cross-border, cross-currency transactions. Notice the key words mentioned here: cross-border, cross-currency transactions. So to have Quant be part of this mix, along with, for instance, the other two big players, Ripple's XRP, Stellar Lumen's XLM, is absolutely huge. So it goes on to mention, we have seen what the world is doing on CBDCs, and the United States is not going to be left behind. This is a big win for crypto, and especially for us as Americans, because if anything, with all the talks of regulation, it's a shame to hear that the United States would be the ones to show up at the end, or just that, be left behind. We go a little bit further down, and it mentions specifically some of these things. And I know a lot of this seems like it's verbatim, but I'm going to mention what needs to be mentioned, and I'm going to leave out what I feel as though doesn't. So according to New Atlantic Council research, the United States, thanks to Project Cedar, has moved into development of a central bank digital currency and joined its colleagues at the European Central Bank, the Bank of Japan, and the Bank of England in making the leap forward. All these jurisdictions have different projects. Some, such as the United States, are focused on wholesale, while others, such as the Eurozone, are hard at work on a retail digital currency that could be used to buy an espresso, of all things. Many of these central banks, including the Fed, have not actually decided to issue a CBDC for that. Most of the central banks will need legislative approval, rightfully so, especially with what's going on here in the United States. And there are major privacy and cyber security challenges to address before most Americans, open up their phones and use the digital dollar. Now, over the span of 2 years, the world's leading central banks have gone from skeptical to serious about a government form of digital currency, as we know. And then basically, the Atlantic Council Geoeconomic Center began this project, of course, back in 2020. Now, there's a lot more that happened in light of this. For instance, the pandemic, all this stuff kind of got delayed. There's all this things that happened with Terra, FTX, so on and so forth. But what I want to get you guys to is this, for instance, where it says specifically, the final motivation It's just that. It's geopolitical. And think about the disaster of what happened basically this year that started a lot of what is referred to as the official stamp of approval of the bear market, right? So we're already heading into a bear market in 2022. And the big, I guess you could say, massive wave of just solidifying that even more was just that, Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So it mentions this final motivation being just that, geopolitical. In the 10 months since Russia's invasion, the Geoeconomics Center research has shown that interest in wholesale central bank digital currency has nearly doubled. Again, you have to keep in mind, before the Russia-Ukraine war, Ukraine was the top country in the world when it came to the adoption of crypto. While the rest of the world, for instance, like the United States, was hovering around a range of 2 to 4% adoption, Ukraine was right around 12%. And since the wars happened, those numbers have increased dramatically. Last time I saw, up to 20%. Might even be higher than that as we speak. By the way, I did a video addressing just that and how crypto is literally saving the lives of people who live in Ukraine. So it says a range of countries, including China, India, Indonesia, South Korea, and Brazil, are pursuing this new technology. Again, think of mainly BRICS, you know, Brazil, the B, Russia, the R, I, India, C, China. BRICS literally means just that. So what does a land war in Europe have to do with the future of finance? Now, specifically, it will get to answer this, but it says when the United States and group of 7 G7 responded to Russian President Vladimir Putin's invasion, they did not with direct military engagement, but with the most sweeping set of financial sanctions ever levied against a major economy. On top of that, the West froze Russian reserves, cut Russian banks off of the SWIFT payment messaging system, and slapped over 6,500 individuals with sanctions. You get the gist. As a result, let's face it, Russia decided to do basically their own thing along with the other BRICS countries. And you do see a lot of, like, you know, what is referred to as the pre-switch of the flip of the switch, with Russia basically taking on XRP, so on and so forth. Now, I'm going to get into this, what I want to show you right here. And of course, you can read more on this particular article from the Digital Pound Foundation. Highly recommend it. But of course, let's start things off here. Now, it's this particular interview with Gilbert Verdian. And of course, I'll pause it in key areas. But if anything, I want you guys to have a bigger perspective of, you know, Gilbert Verdian's role, especially not just in Quant, but his background, right? We're talking about a person that has over 20 plus years to be primed and ready to get this thing going. And if anything, you better believe that there's a Quant connection here. Now I'm going to pause it in key areas, mainly towards the end, and do some commentary, but let's listen to this.
To enable blockchain to be massively adopted for all their clients. And we're doing some innovative work together. It's a world first, where we're able to interconnect different blockchain networks with payment systems and do work with the central bank at the same time. And this is quite innovative because it's payment and settlement using a new technology on blockchain, and it's all possible with our operating system called Overledger.
CBDC DLT networks can be interlinked, and not just with each other all over the world, but also with existing payment systems.
Blockchain networks and the whole blockchain world to existing networks through the Overledger.
And not just with each other all over the world, but also with existing payment systems.
Ledger is an operating system. It's an overlay. It sits on top of blockchain and existing networks.
And not just with each other all over the world, but also with existing payment systems.
It's interoperable. We can connect any to any in terms of existing networks, blockchain networks, different technologies.
But also with existing payment systems.
We connect existing systems.
Also with existing payment systems.
So for the first time, you've got choice to use a single blockchain through Overledger, but then have the benefit of all the other blockchains. We connect existing systems, and that's quite important. A lot of people talk about we need to decentralize the world and we need to change everything. We don't agree. You don't need to decentralize everything, because there's mature technologies, there's mature networks that have been there for years and years, and they operate. We cannot turn those off. They need to operate, and the world needs them to run. So we're saying let's leverage those technologies, and we can actually interconnect what already exists, which makes sense.
We're shaping the system.
We're shaping the system. Think about what he also mentioned about, I don't know, about 10, 15 seconds before the video ended. He specifically mentions that it's not about, for instance, replacing everything. If anything, this, is basically going to be a new monetary system, but it's not to the point where it's just everything's going to be, replaced overnight. Maybe in the end, we have, of course, a brand new monetary system over time. That makes sense. But for it to all be at the beginning and all this doom and gloom that a lot of people think is going to happen right from the start, I just don't see that being a realistic situation. Kind of like, for instance, what Elon Musk mentioned a while back. It's not that fiat is going away immediately. If anything, fiat will still be around in some form or capacity. Now, I want to also get into this. So, for instance, you're going to see this particular thing where it shows this lines of code, and again, the quant connection to this. So here's the thing, right? I'm going through this, and I'm literally seeing 136 lines of code here, and it mentions specifically back in 2021, MIT Digital Currency, Federal Reserve Bank, all this, right, distributed under the MIT software license. And you already see, for instance, a lot of how this was made and so on. And if anything, it gives you more of an idea, for instance, where it mentions the CBDC and specific code. Like, I can even blow it up a little bit more to kind of show you guys. It's not as zoomed in, but nonetheless, look at this as well. Okay. So I saw this, and this was, of course, a while back. It says a transaction process for a hypothetical general purpose central bank digital currency. Again, this is posted on GitHub. And then, of course, it says Open CBDC transaction. It gives you a little introduction of just that. For instance, Open CBDC is a technical research project focused on answering open questions surrounding central bank digital currencies. Again, I've had experience when it comes to repositories. Back when I was doing the whole thing with Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, the mod that we made, we used a repository for just that because it just simply made sense. But this particular repository states this includes the core transaction processor for a hypothetical general purpose central bank digital currency. And look at this specifically. Initially, this work was derived from Project Hamilton, a collaboration between the MIT Digital Currency Initiative, DCI, and the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston. All right. We go further down, right? And for instance, it gives you a whole outline about this specifically. And again, this is of course a while back, but for instance, it has how you can access this particular code, and then basically build it yourself, right, for testing purposes. So this is all basically outlined a long while back. Now you maybe feel, well, why have this, out in the open and so on? A lot of times, these kinds of things are just kind of available, if you will, but not like where it's an official published document that, is newsworthy and so on. It's just, again, it's on a repository, and, sometimes people have access to those particular repositories. Sometimes they don't, in which they have to, get into it with a private key and so on. But this was like open source, if you will. So I went more and more to it and so on. I mean, it gives you, for instance, these different launch parameters to make it happen. Again, it's just a lot of, for instance, coding and so on. I just wanted to point some of this out because, again, you may be wondering, well, where's the actual code and so on? So for people that are into this, it's all basically right here. Now, going further into this, to take more of a deeper dive, if you will, the Quant connection, all right? So it mentions specifically, U.S. government willing to participate in Quant Network MIT ODAP. Quant is one project in the blockchain space that exhibits insane potential. In an interview aired today, Quant CEO Gilbert Verdian revealed that the scope of the project has been extended in collaboration, look at that, with Massachusetts Institute of Technology, aka MIT. Again, guys, there is the Quant connection here. If it ain't Quant, then who in the world could it be? You see the code. You see everything that was outlined in the past. Again, enough evidence to support it's Quant. Literally, I'm just going to go out and say it is Quant. Makes sense it would be. Now I'm going further down in it, and it mentions some of these specific ones, like for instance, Quant, the project that aims to solve the blockchain interoperability issues, surprised the community, of course, today. Again, back in 2020, gives that particular interview with Gilbert Verdian, and then mentions specifically how Quant Network is working in close association with MIT. Together, they are creating an internet-scale protocol to move digital assets. And again, when you look more and more into this, and then look into the article that was posted 3 days ago, you can draw your own conclusion with the evidence. It simply makes sense. Now, in regards to just that, making more sense, Max, I need you to pound it home just a little bit more for me. All right, I'll do just that. So, for instance, look at this. This is from ITU. This was a little while back. So, if you're wondering, why specifically would they pick the likes of Gilbert Verdian? Why Gilbert Verdian? Well, look at this. Look at his huge background. So it says Gilbert is a technologist with an upbringing in business and a deep background in technology, and having over 20 years of industry experience. Gilbert considers himself living at the intersection of, for instance, let me get more into this. So of technical expertise. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Sorry about that. Yeah, got chopped off on that. Apologize. So for instance, security, business, and technology, by blending, for instance, his technical expertise and business know-how, he is able to transform to solve complex challenges faced by business and governments around the world. In recent employments, he was the CISO, which basically is Chief Internet Security Officer, I believe, at NSW Health, Deputy CTO at HM Treasury, working with cabinet ministers and the Chancellor, responsible for securely transforming central government departments. Again, that CBDC connection, including the systems that are critical for the operating and running of the UK economy. Tons of experience is basically Gilbert Verdian. He was also the CTO at UKFI, responsible for rapidly establishing the agency during the financial crisis to take ownership of £350 worth of toxic assets from just that, the banks specifically, right? So when we go a little bit more further into this, I'm actually going to zoom out a little bit more on this.
To enable...
I want to show you the guys this particular one, and that is a little bit more in regards to Gilbert in that regard. So for instance, I'm going to show you this, and again, shout out to Quad Papa for always providing the great links and so on. It's this right here, actually. He's not just, like it says, he's not just a guy, right? So again, earlier, we were talking about the Cybersecurity Awards, CISO of the Year, Gilbert Verdian, right? You see that right there. On top of that, there's a picture of him and his wife. Then, of course, what I just showed you. And then on top of it, it says, you've seen our backgrounds. Personally, this is my first startup. All my previous roles have been working with the boards of companies, ministers, chancellors, just like I mentioned in that other particular article, CEOs as a C-level executive, CISO, CIO, CTO. We're not just a bunch of students out of university who created an app, right? We're talking about some like leading experts in the industry itself. And on top of that, he's not just a student. Now look at this. I want to show you guys this, and I wish I could zoom in a little bit more on this. So if anything, this is actually the biggest I could blow it up. So look at this. This is quite the resume, to say the least. So, he was a member of the board of directors, Digital Pound Foundation. That was back in 2021. From July 2016 to July 2018, he was part of Seymour Cyber, which is of the Bank of England. Top of that, he was a consultant, right, with a very familiar name, Ernst & Young, from 1998 to 99. He was part of the Secure Payments Task Force. Look at that specifically for the Federal Reserve System. For instance, from 2017 to 2018, some of the objectives of that specifically of that Secure Payments Task Force include providing advice on payment security matters. He coordinated with the Faster Payments Task Force to identify solutions for any new or modified payments infrastructure. So that is both fast and secure. He determined areas of focus and priorities for future action to advance payment systems safely, security, and basically, showed resiliency. He also worked back in 2018 and 2019 with the Federal Reserve Systems for the Federal Payment Improvement Community. Again, as we know, he's the CEO and founder of Quant. I mean, it's just on and on. I mean, I'll try to find out some other key ones. Chief Information Security Officer, CISO. Did that for about 2 years. How about some other key ones? Senior Manager Security back in 2007 to 2021, for instance, for EY. That was back, of course, in London, UK. On top of that, let's see here. He was a security lead for the Ministry of Justice for the United Kingdom for 2012 to 2013. Integrated supply and trading, digital security for BP. That was back for about a year, back in 2012. He did work with HSBC from 2011 to 2012. CSO and Deputy CTO, Office of the CTO, HM Treasury from 2009 to 2011. How about this? Financial Services Team of the Year in 2018 for Cybersecurity Awards of 2018. Again, like we mentioned before, the CISO of the Year 2017. Now, how about this? We're always talking about ISO 222, right? So, for instance, he was the founder of blockchain ISO standard TC307. We mentioned that a while back, of course. Conveneur, pronouncing that right, but WG7 for interoperability. Again, Quant is all about interoperability. This was back, for instance, with the International Organization for Standardization, aka ISO, back in April 2016. He was chairman of DLT, which is Digital Ledger Technology 1 and UK Standardization Delegation at ISO TC307 Blockchain and DLT back in 2017 to 2021. There's a lot. There's tons more. I'm not going to list all of it. It's just a very extensive, impressive resume. And again, some of the professional experience highlights is like all that you see right here, the European Commission, the ISOs, US Federal Reserve System, right? Again, think about that particular connection or the topic, the main topic of this particular video, right? So he's already done work with the US Federal Reserve System and so on. So you already have that established connection. Again, a little bit more evidence to support these particular claims. I'm not just going to come up, into a video and just do it because, I want to get a ton of views. I have to have some evidence to back it up. Here you go. And then, of course, all the background he has with MasterCard and all the background he's had with, UK Parliament. On top of that, Ministry of Justice, head of security. It's not about this just being interoperable. It's not about this just, for instance, being very fast. It's not about just having 3 lines of code. It's, again, the security. You have to have security, and especially with all the doubt that's going on in the world. Now, maybe not so much from the technology side for institutional money. I think for institutional money, they already recognize the technology. But of course, as we know, there's a lot of fear going on when it comes to that retail adoption of crypto, right? So going a little bit more further into it, again, you see some of this as well. And then, if anything, look at this particular quote. It says from Gilbert Verdian. By the way, did you know Colin and I have been working in security for 20 years? Again, like what I pointed out for you guys not that long ago. Both of us started in pen testing, ethical hacking, right? Breaking code and applications to identify vulnerabilities for governments and enterprises. Again, this guy is just not a CEO of a company who does nothing. The guy actually probably go to a hackathon and just be there with other nerds, if you will, and do just that. Hack into systems and play around with it, see the vulnerabilities. Very, very impressive. It says, I actually have a few unknown vulnerabilities I discovered. I discovered credited to me for Apple, Oracle, and, for instance, Windows. Almost said Windows. From Gilbert Verdian also. Personally, I also started out using Unix at 6 and learned C and assembly. Our previous jobs have used our technical skills and background to protect entire countries. Again, background to protect entire countries. I have more faith in this guy than somebody who, I hate to say, Sam Bankman-Fried, right? I know apples and oranges, but guys, let's face it. You have somebody that literally has 20 plus year background when it comes to all this, an absolute financial expert at scale that nobody else can really compare with. The only one I think might come close, and I of course give him a shout out as well, probably Ripple's David Schwartz, right? That makes sense. All right, it says personally, okay, we already got into that particular part. So our previous jobs have used our technical skills and background to protect entire countries, economies, and enterprises from security threats. We are as technical as it gets, love being deep into technology. And you see the passion that he already brought years ago. And you see the passion that he still brings to this day. And of course, you know, that just about, of course, you know, wraps it up for today. I think I've outlined almost everything. I will mention this before we do wrap it up. So, of course, this is from CMC, right? And we do a lot of this sometimes. Should say sometimes. We do it quite often. So, the comparing and contrasting of Quant to Bitcoin, right? So, for instance, you know, you have Quant ranked usually in the top 30. Right now, it's 29th. It's at this has dropped in price from 120 down to 110. I've of course bought it 120, so I mean, to a sense, this is a kind of a buy. Excuse me, but you know, again, more appealing circulating supply. How do we know that? Look at this, 12 million Quant, right? A little bit over that. You compare that to the likes of Bitcoin, right? Of course, Bitcoin's worth a lot more, currently speaking. Key phrase, currently speaking, right? So the circulating supply of Bitcoin is a little over 19 million, right? Bitcoin doesn't offer that utility that Quant has. Bitcoin is not going to be implemented as, for instance, using that the interoperability of the Overledger, right? It's not going to be used for cross-border payments, right? Bank-to-bank payments. Peer-to-peer payments. Some people will say, well, no, that's not true, Max. I mean, we do have peer-to-peer payments. Yeah. Are you going to do it at the scale of Stellar Lumens for cross-border payments? No, you're not. For one, it's going to be too expensive and it would take too long. And also, you know, the security behind it. So, again, look at this. When you compare the max supply, 21 million, right? Compare that to the likes of Quant. Max supply 14.6 million, right? Again, guys, I want to stay here in closing. I'll come back into the frame. It's basically this, where everybody's talking about, for instance, the bull run. You know, for me personally, I feel as though the bull run is going to happen right around, for instance, the end of the first quarter of 2023. To me, that makes sense. Highly recommend you guys watching the Bitcoin 4-year cycle video. There's not many views on it, but if you want to learn a little extra something, highly advise it because it goes into detail about these 4-year cycles. And if anything, my key thing is this. It's not just about the bull run, right? Everybody was talking about the bull run. If anything, the utility run, if you know and have done your research, it's about a utility run. The utility run from these particular ISOs, right? Quant, XRP, XLM, you know, some of these other ones and so on. But mainly, for instance, these, in my opinion, top 3 of the ISOs, that makes sense. We're going to jumpstart the bull run through these utility tokens that are tied into ISO 222, right? That simply makes sense. And then, of course, guys, in closing, what I mentioned before, this is massive news for the United States to basically be working on a bank-to-bank digital payment system, or CBDC, and that Quant connection. Quant is going to leapfrog into the future. I stated before, somebody asked me in the comments, where do I feel Quant is going to go? For me, personally, I'm looking at $75,000 to $100,000 a coin. And some people may think I'm nuts for stating that. I feel as though there's enough evidence to support that. When you look at a less circulating supply, less max supply, everything that they're connected with, right? Literally connecting the entire world to Web 3 and even Web 2, if you want to mention that. It just simply makes sense. If you want to look at from, I don't mean no offense by this, you know, being narrow-minded and say, well, Max, you know, Bitcoin, the highest has gone up to 69,000. Okay, that's a very valid point. But again, I still feel as though, look into some of the innovators, the likes of Quant and so on, XRP, XLM, and whatnot. They're going to launch themselves easily into that top 5. And like I mentioned, that creates a substantial amount of market cap that will help the overall crypto market cap not just go back to previous all-time highs of 3 to 4 trillion, but it's going to leapfrog that way, way further ahead. You're going to have to eventually put the ISOs into its own category in itself, right? And of course, that's a topic for another day. So if you liked the coverage that we provide here at Crypto Talk Now, please like, comment, subscribe, and by all means, hit that bell notification. If you enjoy a live show, we provide a live show each and every single day of the week at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. On behalf of myself, Larry, and the rest of the Crypto Talk Now Network team, thanks again for watching. May you all have a blessed day, and we'll see you on the next one.